We are now into the 5th round of the FIDE World Cup 2025, and on your screen is Arjun Erigaisi, the India number 1, who is playing very well at the World Cup but now faces a huge test. He has Levon Aronian as his opponent, and there you see both of them. Now, this is a pairing which perhaps is the strongest one of the round. Levon with a rating of 2728, Arjun with a rating of 2769. A lot of their fans would have wanted them to clash somewhere in the semi-finals, which would ensure that one of them, or I mean, which would ensure perhaps both of them could go to the candidates. But with the fact that they've met each other in the 5th round, it means the dream of one of the players will come to an end. We have Gunnar there from Reykjavik, who has come in, and Jankovic, who has come there from Croatia, making the first moves, vice presidents of European Chess Union. And the pawns are taken back, the players are ready, and it will be a very, very exciting battle, as both of them are quite uncompromising, especially Arjun, and I think it will force Levon to be creative as well. Pawn to d4 by Ajubai, and Levon plays pawn to d5. Arjun goes for the queen's gambit with pawn to c4, e6. The queen's gambit was declined. Knight to f3 played. Now you can be planning to play Catalan, and look at this very tricky move order that Levon employs. He goes knight d7, and I think it's specifically against g3 move, because once you play knight c3, you are back into mainline territory with knight f6. But with g3, you could potentially take rook b8, b5 business. Okay, anyway, it's for the opening theoreticians to analyze that. Queen c2, and Levon is like, give me that pawn. e4 played, attacking the pawn on c4. If white gets it back, would be very happy. Knight to b6, defending the pawn here from black side. And now a4 played, trying to gain some space on the queen side, kick the knight away if possible, and Levon quickly pushes his pawn to a5, stopping the a4 pawn. We have bishop to e2. Now this pawn cannot be won, but for in return, white has this very strong pawns. Black can try to destroy them with the move c5, but Levon plays bishop to b4. We are already in virgin territory here, new territory. This has never been played before. White castles, and now black also castles here. One interesting move could be bishop to g5 in this position, which looks pretty good, but Arjun plays the very calm bishop e3, stopping the move c5 from happening. And Levon goes bd7, because after all, this was his problem piece. He develops it, puts pressure on a4, knight jumps in to e5, and now queen e8, again putting pressure here with a knight, bishop and queen. We have knight takes c4, a very interesting move. Right now you can't take here. If you take on c3, I take on b6 with a very good position. So Levon chops off knight takes c4, and you have bishop to c4 taken. The bishop is active, and Levon finally hits in the center, saying this is my counterplay here. f3 played by Arjun. Also possible to play was d5, but I believe Arjun didn't like that structure, so he goes f3, and now pawn takes pawn taken, and after bishop takes pawn, what we will have here is 4 pawns for white, 3 pawns for black, and black will have a majority on the queen side. Bishop takes d4 does happen. White's position does look great, because f4 e5 would be very dangerous, but look at this move, bishop e6, very nice. If you take, I take back with the queen, defending the knight. If you take on f6, I take on c4. So bishop e6, a nice move, also taking into control the d5 square. Arjun plays bishop d3. Now this is slightly surprising because I was expecting knight e2 to defend the bishop, but bishop d3, he's setting up e5. That's his plan. e5, f4, rook comes to d8. And Levon is like, I'm not going to give you time. I'm attacking your pawn, bishop on d4. And if you give me this bishop, your dark squares will become weak. Whoa, he takes it, and this is very big decision because I was expecting Arjun to play bishop f2 here, but takes here, and I think Arjun's going very concrete here. After pawn takes, the king side structure has been compromised, but black has the bishop pair now. Very important. Arjun can now play e5 to attack here. He goes f4. I love this move. The idea of this move is to move up with rook f3 to g3 or h3 to keep attacking. Queen to c6 played. And the queen on c6 is putting pressure in this direction. e5. He pushes the pawn even further ahead. Bishop takes h7 is a big threat now. But I mean, not a big threat, it's a threat. fe5, Levon ignores it. Levon very confident about his position, and this requires great assessment skills because Arjun is going in now. He takes, bishop takes on h7 with a check. King to h8. And just imagine if the rook somehow, it can't get here because there's a bishop, but somehow this king is toasted. He goes bishop f5. He wants to eliminate that bishop. And rook to g8 played by Levon. He's putting pressure on the g2 point. Wants to double the rooks perhaps. Bishop takes on e6. You have queen takes e6. Now rook a to e1, putting a lot of pressure on the e5 pawn. There's queen g6 here. Now if queen takes g6, you take rook takes, and I think Levon makes this very practical decision to give up the pawn in the center. And this is where his experience comes in. Even before things get dire, he's like, let me get the queens off the board. Now it's a rook endgame after bishop takes c3. He's a pawn down. His pawn is under attack. B takes c3. But he has activity. Look at him swooping in. Rook d2. Attacking the g2 pawn. And white plays the move. Pawn to g3. Yes, pawn to g3. Connecting these pawns. Now Levon plays this very interesting move. Rook to h6. Attacking the h2 pawn. h4 played. And now rook c6 to get the g3 pawn weakened. But on the other hand, you've definitely given some moves to white. And Arjun chops off this pawn on a5. There was also a possibility to begin with rook f2 here, which could have been nicer perhaps. But rook c3 taken. These endgames are very difficult to calculate. Check to the king. King g7. Another check here. And look at Levon's time. He has 14 minutes and he has to decide between king h7, king f8 and king h6. And he takes a good 7 minutes to play king h7. King f8 was dangerous with the h pawn running down. So king h7, rook f2 played, rook d3 keeping. Because if you take here, white is close to winning here. So rook d3, good move. And now king g2. Another important moment in the game. White is a pawn up, has things under control, threatening rook e2. So f6 played to push the rook away. The rook becomes slightly passive on g4. Otherwise, it could swing here. It was also exerting pressure here. but now only on the g file. Rook c4 attacking the pawn on a4, also stopping f5. Rook e2 trying to get in here, and very quickly played rook d7, because if you take here, this is over, game over. King h6, I have rook e g7 with a mate coming up. So he plays rook d7, rook e6. Maybe it was possible to play some other way here, but Levon now gives a check, king f3, because king h3, rook c1 or c2 is a draw here. So that's why he goes king f3, check, king e2 played, and now plays rook a3, attacking the a4 pawn. We are on move 38. Levon has 1 minute 50 seconds. This time Arjun has to be careful, because his own king is getting hunted here in the position, king h7, and now there's check, 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 rook e8, rook e7, rook e8. I guess that's how you hold this to a draw, because if you try more, that's not going to help here. King h7, you have, I guess, rook e7. Arjun would definitely have wanted to press more, I mean, it's natural, but somehow Levon's defense was so accurate, king h8, that he got no chance here. Arjun comes back and he plays now check. Yeah, a draw is agreed here, and a great result for Levon here. And look at Arjun there, always curious, very quickly, where did I miss something? And Levon was like, I'm also not so sure. And I think there was this point, where he took rook takes a5 in the rook endgame. I think rook endgames are very subtle. It's very difficult to decide which move is correct. For example, in such a position, after h4, rook c6, rook takes a5, maybe rook f2 would have been more accurate. Although, I mean, who knows? Perhaps not. So rook a5, rook c3, you give a check, king comes here, and yeah, by this point black already had a lot of activity. So this pawn hunting on a5 may not have been the most accurate, but then again, rook f2, rook d3, maybe king g2, you do reach a similar position. Like in the game, you don't even have the extra pawn here, but you have an extra tempo, and perhaps that tempo means much more in this position with rook coming in than the extra pawn and rook d7, maybe h5, and here it could get potentially interesting. So yeah, and also the opening that was chosen by both the players was interesting. A big fight here, and as Levon constantly says, he loves to play the youngsters because they push him, they expand his understanding of the game, they make him play in a different way than what his contemporaries, let's say someone like Fabi or Nepo or these top players, get him to play. And there you see more analysis happening between them. I love while we all see the competitive side of this tournament, finishing in the top, reaching the candidates, and all of that is important, we shouldn't forget that perhaps this is also an opportunity for both of them to learn from each other, to get better, and to become stronger chess players.